And so if you've got any questions with what you've got planned, just speak up and such. And, but I want to just go over the Weichert process on open houses and talk about what we do to have such good results with our open houses. So open houses are another one of these staples to real estate prospecting and real estate marketing. People have been doing open houses since they've been listing properties. Essentially, that's basically all the marketing there was in the 70s and 60s. And, they would put a sign in the yard and they would, put some balloons up and they would just advertise, hey, come take a look at this home. Before the internet, and even back then, before people even used the telephone that much, that's how you would sell a property. Is you'd put the sign up and you would kind of wave your hands and say, hey, this house is for sale, and people would drive by or they'd walk by and they would stop in and see what's going on. And so over time, of course, we get the MLS books where they actually would print off all the MLS sheets and those would be in the books. And then right about when I came along in real estate, the internet became big and we had the MLS online, and it's just increased in technology since then. But I'd say all that little history just to note, this is how people used to sell homes from the very, very beginning of, since the beginning of real estate agents. Since people were selling homes for other people, this is how they were sold. It still works. It's still one of the best ways to find new people, one of the best ways to market a property, get attention for a property. So that's why we do them. And with Weichert, we do ask that agents do 2 open houses a month. And we know if you're doing that, you're going to be picking up plenty of activity and business. So again, regular open houses do a few things, but they do tell their customers that you're active and working. And one of the side notes from a company perspective is we really want our agents doing open houses because we know it makes our brand look better. It makes our company look better. It looks like there's more activity out there. And it's not like it looks like it. There is more activity out there, right? Because we're just physically out there. But the difference is now we could do great things online. We could do great social media advertising, but no one's seeing that unless they are on those ads. But the open houses have a much bigger impact on the community because people actually see the activity. And same thing for your sellers, right? Your sellers see that you're doing the open house and they know you're spending the time on it, even though you might be spending hours and hours and hours marketing the property, calling other agents, reverse prospecting other agents and saying, hey, I think your buyer might be interested in this property. We could be doing all these great things, but your seller doesn't actually see that. So open houses is a great way to be seen in the world. And it's very, very inexpensive to do open houses. So that's another great thing for all agents, but particularly new agents that haven't made money in real estate yet. This is a great way to do that. So talked about a few of these here, but why do we hold open houses? Well, number one, to sell the house, right? We have a listing with the seller and we're looking to actually sell the house. And like I said, way back when, this is how homes were sold, and it still works. It's still a great way to find the actual seller. Number two, to satisfy the seller. And that's sometimes what sellers think. They think, well, you're just doing this to make me happy, or you're just doing this for number three, to prospect for buyers. Yes and yes. We are doing it to satisfy you as a seller. We want you to see that we're trying. We want you to see that we're marketing. So if a seller ever says something like that and says, well, you don't have to do it just to satisfy me, and say, yes, I do have to do it to satisfy you. You being happy with my marketing is important, right? And just kind of fast forwarding a little bit, when you're having the doors presentation and there's 2 slides on open houses, the first slide is about convincing the seller that to let you do open houses. And the second slide is to go over how we do open houses. So on that first slide, you always just want to ask the seller, how do you feel about open houses? And sometimes they'll say, well, I don't think they work. I think they're a waste of time. I think they're for you guys to just prospect for buyers. One of my best comeback, I'll try to talk through some of that with them, and they say, hey, you guys are just looking for buyers. Yeah, that's what you hired me to do, right? I'm looking for buyers. Maybe they'll buy your house. Maybe they won't. I don't know. But that's my job. And so when I'm holding another house open, maybe not your house, but I find a buyer, they might be interested in your house. So yes, I'm constantly prospecting for buyers. So I usually will explain all of that, and then I'll bring it back around and say something like, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I understand, it sounds like you're not super interested in the open house program, but do you think it would hurt the marketing of your house to do an open house? They can't say yes. If they say yes, I've had people say yes. If they say yes, they're just a complete jerk, or they're being really difficult, or they truly don't get it. But clearly, there's no argument. We cannot have a debate and say that open houses hurt your marketing of your house. It doesn't. That's a fact. It's not an opinion. It's a fact. So really, just the last few months, we've had maybe the first real argument of why not to do an open house, where people say, well, I'm concerned about COVID. Like, okay. Like, that's the time when we need to respect, the health and all of that. That's really the only thing I've ever had come back to me where I would say, all right, I understand, right? So it does not hurt. They might argue and say, well, I don't think it's great, the best marketing. I don't think it's how we're going to sell the house. Fine, but do you think it will hurt? No. Okay, great. So let me do the open house, right? So I know I'm kind of jumping around there a little bit, but this is why we do them, to sell the house, satisfy the seller, prospect for buyers. And that's what most people think. Well, then we also have sellers in here, right? Well, what do you mean? How are we prospecting for sellers? Well, several really important things. When we talk about the marketing that we do for the open house, this will become a little bit more clear. But if you walk around the neighborhood and you knock on the doors and you tell people, hey, I'm doing an open house at your neighbor's property down there at 123 Main Street, and I just want to let you know we're really excited about the listing. We're out here marketing it. Do you have any friends, family, work colleagues that you're thinking about moving into your neighborhood? Maybe they say yes. They probably say no. But what did you just do? You made an impact on that seller saying, hey, I'm out here working, right? So, of course, you're going to want to give them your business card. If they're not there, you're going to have a leave behind to put on their door, something saying, hey, we're holding an open house. Put your business card on that as well. So all of those little impacts make a difference. Now, if they are there and you have that conversation, it should always not be about, hey, do you want to buy your neighbor's house? They probably don't. Although a lot of times they do for their friend or their mother, or as an investment property or something like that. But you don't have to ask them about that. They will certainly tell you if they're interested in that. But ask about their friends, family members, that sort of thing. It's a lot less invasive on them. Again, they're going to say no most of the time. Sometimes they might say, yeah, actually my work colleague's been looking to get a new place. Wonderful. Have that conversation. But when they say no, we follow that up by saying something to the effect of, by the way, are you thinking of selling? We call it the Columbo close, right? Just, by the way, just one more thing. Are you thinking of selling? And every time you have a contact in that neighborhood, you should ask that question. The answer is going to be no 90+% of the time, right? So what's the pressure? Sometimes people are like, oh, I don't know, it's a lot of pressure on that. I'm not really. You're going to get a no. You should expect a no. When you get a yes, you're like, oh, okay, So it's going to be no the vast majority of the time. But you ask the question, and even those that say no, you planted an idea in their head, and they now have your information. They see that you're a hardworking agent, and whether it's right then, maybe the next week or two they call you, or maybe it's months from now. But over time, you're doing enough open houses, you're knocking on enough doors, you're meeting enough sellers, you're gonna have people that say, yeah, actually, I'm curious what my house might sell for. You're gonna have people take your card and call you 6 months later. It's just a numbers game. But absolutely, one of the best ways to get sellers is to do open houses, as long as you do all the other marketing that goes with them. Even if you just do an open house and you don't knock on the doors, it's still a good way to get sellers, because sellers will see the activity. The problem is they don't know you. So they might just call the office and say, hey, I saw you Weichert guys out there doing open houses and wanted to talk to somebody about listing my house. Like, from an office perspective, we're like, great, but it's not good for you because they're not calling you directly. All right. But don't miss that point, that this is a great way to get listings. The buyers are kind of obvious. Yes, people come in the door, they're looking to buy, which of course a lot of them have something to sell too, right? So that's another way to pick up sellers. But don't forget about the neighbors in there. All right. All right. And then number 4 is to promote the listing, promote yourself. Kind of goes into number 3 a little bit, but you do want to do actual good real estate marketing for your listings, and this is obviously a great way to do that. The more your name is out there, the more your business cards are out there, the better off you're going to be, right? All right. So here's another reason we hold open houses. 74% of open house attendees bought a house within 6 months of attending our open house. So when we say our, this is a Weichert stat that came out. So this isn't like some third party, this random national stat or something that we don't know where the data came from. This is something Jim Weichert did with his corporate open houses. They had internal surveys done, the surveys being that they called all their open house lists and they found out what happened with these people who came to the open house. 74% bought a house within 6 months. So when people say, well, I don't like doing open houses because people are just kicking tires and, you know, they're not really interested, that's not true. 3/4, almost 3/4 are going to buy a house within 6 months. So what about the other 1/4? Are they just kicking tires? They're not interested? Probably not even that many, because they might be looking to see what their neighbor's house is doing because they're interested in selling theirs. Or they came to that open house because they were interested in looking for their friend or their mother or their son. This stat is, I think, skewed in the low end. Because if we know that 74% that came to the house actually bought within 6 months, I know there's a percentage of that leftover 26% that helped someone else buy a house, whether it was a friend or family member, or maybe they ended up selling their house. So there's still even more opportunity than that. So even on the far low end, if we just say, you know, 3/4 of the people that come to your open house are serious and actually looking to buy, great. How many of this, how many more of that 26% bought a house within 12 months, 18 months? Significantly more, right? So the point is, these people are real. And sometimes, yes, it does take 12 months to get them to close. Sometimes it takes 18 months. Sometimes it takes 5 years. But that's what we got KV Core for. That's what we got, you know, consistent follow-up programs to help you stay in touch with these people. But again, just in the last 6 months, 3/4 will buy a house, okay? So don't fall into that idea of saying, oh, they're just tire kickers. They're not. 3/4 are not, okay? All right, so what do we got to do to find an open house? So one of the other issues in today's market is that we have such a decline of listings. We have so few homes available on the market. We get a really good house and it goes on the market and it's sold within an hour, right? One of our new agents, Wayman, there just picked up a new listing, put on the market yesterday. It's under contract this morning. Like, you know, it happens. So that's part of the problem, but there are still homes to hold open. All right. So whether we have a small amount of opportunities or a huge amount, either way, we got to consider what's going to be there for the weekend, right? So you do want to consider your location. The closer the homes are to the main roads, doesn't mean it's on the main road, but within a couple of signs from a main road, usually the more traffic you're going to get. That doesn't necessarily mean that those are the only homes you should hold open. Some of like Amy DePore's house, she held open. She ended up getting a whole bunch of traffic. And that house, I've been to her house. It's way out in the middle of nowhere. And she had like 18 people come because she did some good advertising. She had social media ads and other things that got people to come to the house, and got 2 offers off of that one open house. So yes, location though, generally we want to be closer to the main roads. If you have a choice between one house that's way out and one house that's a little bit closer to some main roads, I typically would pick the one closer to town, right? So think about that. The curb appeal, again, it works both ways. You don't want to just do open houses on the really pretty homes. Generally, yes. Generally, yes, those are going to be easier to get people to come in and so on. But the homes that are actually really kind of really bad on the outside, sometimes those are really good open houses too, because everyone's really curious and they think they can get a good deal. So it's not a hard and fast rule, but generally when we talk open houses, yes, we want it to look good from the outside, and certainly we want to do whatever we can to help that curb appeal. It's kind of like in sports, or you know, in the NFL, they always talk about the worst place you want to be is right in the middle, right? Because if you're one of the best teams, you can maybe go win the Super Bowl. If you're one of the worst teams, maybe you can get a really good draft pick that'll change your fortune and you can go win the Super Bowl. One of the worst places to be is right in the middle, where you're not going to get the greatest draft picks, and it's really hard to kind of dig yourself out of it. I kind of think of that when I think of open houses too. Like the ones that have this great curb appeal, yes, we want to do those. The ones that look really horrible, yes, I want to do those. It's the ones that are like, okay. Like those are the ones where sometimes I'm like, I don't know, you know, what we're gonna get. So it's just my 2 cents on that. But again, right now with the current market we're in here in 2020, it's kind of take what you can get as far as what's available on the homes, because there's just not that much available. Which all the more reason to do open houses, because the buyers are out there, they're seeing homes go under contract, so that if they see those open house signs, they're very interested in getting out there and taking a look. How about which days to hold them open? Traditionally, year after year, open houses were done Sunday afternoons, right? We find in our area in the South that Saturday afternoons seem to be the best day. Sundays are often eat up with church time and things like that. And now you get to this time of year, the NFL starts tonight. You know, the NFL games are playing on Sunday afternoons. So certainly, like with my family, that's probably where we're going to be Sunday afternoons. And so there's just enough people that are doing that we typically see Saturday afternoons being maybe the best time. But honestly, there is no best time. Saturdays are great, but doing them Saturday morning, doing one Monday afternoon, Wednesday morning, like you're gonna get results no matter when you do it. We've had some agents do some really weird things that work well. You know, starting an open house at 9 in the morning on the middle of the week. Like the only problem that I see with that is that oftentimes people will think, well, they're not actually holding the open house. They forgot to pick up their signs. Like, you know, that's what I think. They're, you know, sometimes the public might think on that stuff. But if that's the time you have available, then just do it. Certainly, I love the idea of those like 4 to 6 in the afternoons during the week, because people are coming home from work. Nowadays, they might not even be coming home from work, but they might be able to get off of work from their house and go see the open house. So I really like that 4 to 6, 4 to 7 time frame in the evenings during the week. So sorry, go ahead.
Do you think that, so Sunday morning, I'm doing the open house, I think, for Madison, and I scheduled it from like 11 to 2, thinking I would get the coming home from church traffic.
Sure.
And then people will still be home in time to watch football.
Yeah. I mean, sure. Again, these days we have found that it really doesn't matter too much. In the past, it's been more about the newspaper ads, and it was just like everyone was doing them Sunday afternoons. So people would go out Sunday afternoons. But now, by doing all your other ads, your social media ads about when you're doing it, like, people will find you. So try out different things. And again, just what fits your schedule. Because I know you got a lot of other stuff going on. So don't stress about that time. Like, pick what works for you and the people will come. You know, that would be my advice. Pick what works for you and just do it, you know. But it is important to know, like, it doesn't have to be the same time as everyone else. Okay, good. So open house timeline. So when we do our open houses, we got to make sure we get all of our marketing in, right? So for a Weichert open house to be called a Weichert open house, we've got to do all of the marketing that comes with it, right? We got to make sure the sellers are prepared and they know what to expect. So if you're borrowing someone's listing, like I think Kim, you just said you're borrowing Madison's listing, make sure Madison is aware, the sellers are aware of when you're going to be there, how it's going to work. You're going to call them when you're done, or how's that all going to happen? Keep that communication going. All right. Make sure you get your signs, get your balloons. With Weichert, we do 8 signs. Make sure you get up your 8 signs. Don't wimp out on that. Don't wimp out and say, oh, I only need 4 signs for this property. Find a way to get 8 signs out there, okay? Sometimes it's really easy. Sometimes you got to kind of go out a little bit further. A little note, little tip that I don't remember things too well. And so I found over the years, like, I got to print out a map with my house in it, and I got to make a note of where my signs are. Because when I started putting out 8 signs, I forget where they are. You know, after the open house, I'm tired. I just want to go home. I want to watch the game. And, you know, and it's like, he's like, oh, screw it. I found 6 of them, you know? So make sure you're making a note, or you're printing it. For me, I like to print out a little map and then just make little X's on where I put my signs. Just makes my life a lot easier. Got really tired of spending, you know, hours trying to find these signs, and it's not good if it says like open house now or something like that. And excuse me real quick. If it says like open house now and then the sign stays out there, right? That's not good. So we got to get out there and get those signs picked up. But why 8? Why are we doing 8? So again, Weichert did a study. I apologize. Let me see if I can grab this real quick. Weichert Realtors Unlimited, this is Aaron. I'm sorry, it's who? Rozzy? Oh, okay, Rozzy, yes. Yes, she's not in the office right now, but I can give you a cell phone number if you like. No, actually. I've got it as 828-772-6336. You're welcome. Bye. All right, so that'd be great on the recording. So anybody watching this later, yay. Okay. All right. So Weichert did a study on the why to do 8 signs, right? So 1 to 4 signs averaged 5.3 prospects. 5 to 7, 15.7. 8 signs averaged 27.3. And when they did more than that, they didn't seem to get more signs. One of the kind of fun little Weichert stories of Jim Weichert, when he was Jimmy Weichert, and he was starting his real estate career. He got his first listing in New Jersey, and he put signs all over town. All over town. This is before, you know, all the zoning laws and all the signage police and all this stuff. So he put up signs all over town pointing in different directions towards the house. So there was not lying. He's, you know, he's saying, hey, you go down this street, you go down this street, you go down 10 more streets and you get to this house, you know. But he put signs all over town saying house for sale, Weichert Realtors, you know. And he was living in the same town with his mother, and all of his mother's friends kept up and like, oh, Jimmy's got all these new listings all over the place. And really, he had one listing, but he had all this signs up, right? So it's kind of a cute little funny story. I'd love to do that now. I've looked into it, but we get in trouble with our zoning laws and police and stuff these days. So, but anyway, that's the same idea, right? Just getting more and more signs out there so people can see that.
Aaron, is there any places that I'm not allowed to put signs other than Marcus told me in an intersection on the freeway?
Yeah.
No
So,
off ramps.
Technically, in the city of Asheville, you're not allowed to put up any signs. However, this is one reason maybe to do it during the weekend. I've spoken with their signage police, and basically they say we work Monday through Friday. So, if it's gone by Monday, we're not gonna, foul. Basically we're not going to do anything. And over the years, that's generally what I've seen to be true, like with open house signs. When I first started in real estate, we would put open house signs up absolutely on like Tuesday for the Saturday open house. And we would put them up saying Saturday 2 to 4, and we put them up all over town, and it would say that the date and the time, so that we can generate, okay, I see there's an open house there. All right, I want to go. And obviously that's a better way to advertise, but you can't do that anymore, at least not in our area. So you really have to do it the day of. And I find if you just put them up an hour or so before the open house and you take them down right when you're done, very few get messed with. Very few people call and complain. You will still get some, but that's generally okay. It's just when we leave them up for too long is when we have the problems. Okay. Further on that note, if you put a sign in someone else's yard, like sometimes you got to put a sign in a neighbor's yard or something, you should ask their permission first. So I also would say if you can't get a hold of them or something and you still want to put the sign there, just keep it as close to the road as you can, not putting it way up into their yard, but just as close to the road as you possibly can. And then generally, I see people being okay with that. But you will always have a few people that have nothing better to do in life than complain. So that company study also showed that when they do some ad and they do 4 signs, then we get 9 prospects. A large ad, 3 signs, 8 prospects. No ads, but doing 8 signs, they're getting 28 prospects. So again, just showing that the signage matters. The amount of signs you can get out there matters. Okay. What else do you got to do? Well, you want to get out your open house postcards. So we've got some great back-end systems with Weichert that will make getting the open house postcards out really easy. The problem is it takes a little bit of time, right? They're shipping them from Texas, and it's just a post office issue. It just takes a while for the post office to get them delivered. So to get the postcards out, you've got to be planning those at least 2 weeks in advance. So if you're doing an open house this Saturday, you would have had to have those ordered not last Friday, but probably the Friday before that. All right. So we want to plan on our open houses as much as possible. Of course, the problem with that right now is, well, what's available in 2 weeks? I don't know. So I get it. And it is a problem with the postcards. All right. But that is the correct way to do it. Order your postcards 2 weeks in advance. Make sure we get them out there. What else do we want to do? Absolutely, positively, you want to get it on social media. Social media ads for open houses are some of the best impact and some of the best active ads you can put into social media, where people will actually pay attention to it, consider going. Even if they don't come, you still made the impact of it. Maybe they picked out your info, etc. But getting people to the open house, other than your signage, I would say social media is number 1. All right, so get that out there.
So I'm sorry, okay.
Yep.
So I put it on my social media, and then do you recommend doing a $5 or $10 boost on it?
I would, yep. And you know, you can boost them that way. And KV Core has some automated click, click, click and boost out the open house. A little more expensive that way. I don't know, it's $40 or something like that. But it'll probably get more activity, but it's costing more money. But certainly just boosting it out on your own for $5-10 can be a great way to do that. Yep. In addition to your social media, like we were talking earlier on prospecting for sellers, you want to absolutely do those door knocks. That is one of the easiest ways. And especially now as we're getting into September, the weather is going to be just perfect for 3-4 months living in Nashville area. So getting out there, knocking on doors when they're not there, just leave this little, you're invited to an open house on their doorknob. Where the logo is a little spot there for a business card. Tuck your business card in there and leave it on the door. And then you could just have those, that's fine. But I like to have like a flyer as well that would just say the address and the time of the open house. So when you get to talk to them, you could leave them that instead of this little door hanger. But definitely give them that business card. The conversation is very simple, light and airy. A lot of times people will crack the door open. They don't really want to talk to you. And to say, you know, I'm here with Weichert Realtors and we're holding an open house. One of the things I like to do, depending on their personality, sometimes I like to say, I'm having a party down the road here on Saturday. And they're like, what? Yeah, I'm holding an open house. They're like, oh, okay. Like it just kind of makes them smile a little bit. So yeah, you know, I'm gonna have some cookies, some lemonade, like, or whatever you're doing, but make it light and breezy and say, look, I understand you live in the neighborhood. You're probably not interested in buying that house, but I wanted to drop by, let you know about it and see, do you have any friends, family, work colleagues, anybody like that is looking in your neighborhood? You pause and let them answer that. Again, they're going to say no most of the time, but a lot of the times, more often than you think, they're like, well, just let me think about that. Or, yeah, you know, actually, Joe and Sally were thinking about changing and moving over here. And so then you get into whatever conversation you can get into there. And then, like we said, after that dies down and there's nothing else to talk about, then start to leave and pull the little Columbo move. Oh, yeah, by the way, just one more thing. Are you guys thinking of selling? And just ask that every time. And I know it takes some practice, but believe me when I say it really isn't that stressful, because you're not, if you say it the right way, if you're like, well, I'm here to see if you want to list your house, like that's kind of like up in your face and stressful. It's like, oh, just one more thing. Have you guys considered selling? Market's unbelievable for sellers. Have you guys considered selling? Oh, no, we're not interested. Okay, yeah, no problem. All right, see you later. They already have your business card and you're gone. And again, sometimes you just plant that seed. Sometimes they don't want to say yes to your face, but then, you know, the wife gets home, the husband gets home, they talk, and they're like, you know, this lady dropped by. She was really nice, and she was talking to us about the open house, and she asked if we were interested in selling. I know we talked about that last week. You know, should we give her a call? Like, those are the conversations that you can start by just asking. Okay, and it is. I think the physical presence is really helpful to build that rapport with people. So everything's always light and breezy on those conversations. Maybe as a guy, it's a bigger issue for me as well, but you want to stand back from the door. I don't want to be right up at the door threshold that's intimidating to people. So back up 2 or 3 more steps. Like if it was my friend's house, I might be here. If it's on one of these door knocks, it might be 2 or 3 steps further back than that. Just so you don't appear intimidating, you don't appear like you're going to rush into the house or anything like that. And just, you know, voice goes up a few octave levels and just light and breezy, right? So that's how I always found door knocking to be kind of fun and not a big deal. And, you know, some people are rude, but other people are fantastic. The biggest problem that I have with door knocking is that sometimes people want to tell you their life story, right? That's the biggest problem that I find, because sometimes you're like, I gotta go, I got other things to do, but they just want to talk. So those are obviously great things, good conversations, become friends and get things going. But that's honestly the hardest part to me, right? All right, so the invitation, you can also make calls to the neighborhood, pick up the phone list. Call the neighbors again, say, well, I just knocked on their doors. Or, maybe you call them on Wednesday and you knock on the doors on Friday, and say, well, why would I do that? I already talked to them on the phone. Why would I knock on the door? Because that's how you make the impacts with people. And even if you drop by and you got the chance to talk to them on the phone, and then you drop by and they say, oh, didn't I just talk to you on Wednesday? Oh, yeah, you did. But I also was dropping by the neighborhood, just want to knock on everybody's door. Remind you again about the open house tomorrow. It's another impact. It's another conversation. And if they say, well, why would you call and knock on the door? Like, well, because I'm working my tail off for my seller. So anybody who lists with me, this is the sort of marketing that I do for them. Oh, and by the way, are you thinking of selling? Yeah. So
where do you get the lists of the neighborhood phone numbers?
There's a lot of different ways to do that. Cold Realty Resource is one place that you can get through Weichert. The office, Allison can grab a neighborhood list for you as well through another source that we use. So there's several different ways to do that. All right, preparing your sellers. Make sure you have access to the home, confirming the time of the open house. And this is really even more true when you're borrowing someone's listing. You got to make sure that you're communicating with them. Don't just assume that it's all good. And don't assume because it's a vacant house that it's fine. Like we had an issue a few months ago where we had planned to do an open house that was vacant and nobody really told the seller. And the seller was actually there tearing some stuff apart that they wanted to get repaired. And they had no idea we're going to do an open house that day. It's just kind of an innocent, bad communication issue. Just we shouldn't have let that happen. We should have certainly communicated to the seller that, hey, we're going to plan on doing this open house. And then they would not have come out and started ripping open a wall, So confirm the open house with the seller. Provide them with the staging checklist off of Weichert 1. Hopefully they already have the home pretty much ready to go. This is a big one when you're borrowing a listing. Get the phone number where you could call the seller, or if your other listing agent wants that, you can call them and make sure they're available and just say, hey, can I text you? Can I call you when I'm done with the open house? Or can I text you? Can I call you if I have a question? Just make sure that somebody's available. Sometimes I think sellers like to rush home. If we're doing an open house from 2 to 4, they want to come home right at 4 o'clock. That may not be a good idea because we might still have 3-4 different couples at the open house. So a lot of times it's a good idea to have their phone number and say, hey, look, I'm going to text you just as soon as we're done. If I don't have anybody at the open house at 4 o'clock, I'll text you right at 4. But if somebody's here and we're still talking and I don't text you, just hold off around the block or something until I call you or text you, right? Definitely arrange for children to be off the premises. I kind of laugh at that one, but certainly pets as well. We really don't want pets to be there if it's at all possible. Sometimes buyers have allergies and stuff as well that can be a problem, but more importantly, we don't want dogs to be barking, and we don't want dogs to be biting, and cats too. Like I had an incident years and years ago with a cat where they're like, oh, it's just a house cat, she'll lay around the house all day, if she gets out it's no problem, don't worry about it. I'm like, okay, fine. So the cat's at the house. Well, then a couple comes in with some kids, and I don't know what the kids did, but they pissed off the cat. They were pulling on it or something, and the cat scratched one of them, and the buyers got really upset. And it's like, oh, I'm sorry your kids are out of control, but it was a problem. So even, when they have really good pets, really good dogs, really good cats, we just can't always count on really good people being in the house. So it's always good to get the pets out of there. Or if worst case scenario, the pets are in a particular room that we just have to close off and nobody can go in. All right, prepare the house, ask them to cut the grass, shovel the walk if there's snow. In our area, because we don't get a ton of snow, when there is snow and ice, I would cancel the open house for several reasons. One, you're really unlikely to get a lot of people. to it, because people just really hunker down when we get any kind of snow or something. And two, there just seems to be a lot more liability with that. You can't predict where all, even if you put salt down and everything else, like it seems like every winter my heart has to drop because somebody tells me, hey, look, I was working with the buyer, they fell when we were showing a house, and you're like, I don't see how any of that's our fault, but the legal people might see that differently. So anyway, if we have snow or ice, I would just cancel open house, because you're not going to get good business, and it seems to be a liability issue. Take out all the trash, put the valuables away. These are things to be talking with the sellers about, and then you should be doing a run through before the open house starts as well. Again, like we talked about the signs, ask the neighbors for permission when you're knocking on doors, things like that. What you should bring, you should have everything you need to make an offer on the property, for one, right? And you should have everything you need for buyer agency agreements, those sort of things. You should have all of the disclosures on the property printed out. Sometimes people go a little bit crazy and they print out 10 different copies of all the disclosures, and certainly that's not wrong, but I'm just like, you're not going to need 10 of them. You can have them available for people to look at, and then you can have one that's ready to sign or something. And of course, with the internet and dot loop and stuff nowadays, chances are you're not going to be hand signing it anyway, right? But with Weichert, we have these open house displays. So I know, like Denise Pullman's going to go through this with our new agents and help you create one as well. But we have some samples and some ones you can just use in the office if you want to pick up and use them. But I highly recommend you make your own, so that it's one that you can customize and make it pretty and so on. But essentially, it's just something like this, right? It's got the little plastic clear pockets in there, and then you can switch out, the 8.5 by 11 different pages. So it might be just a standard, hey, here's what a market absorption rate looks like, and then it might have an actual PTA for that house, or it might have the Weichert difference little thing, or it might have an actual MLS sheet for the property. So you can just kind of customize it for each one, and a lot of them would stay the same if you put like this one in the middle and stuff, and it's just something to look at. And we've had some people come up with some really great ideas on this, using big mirrors, people using old frames, whatever you want to do. But you set it up on like the dining room table or a kitchen table or something like that, it absolutely stands out. So it's definitely something to do. And I'm going to flip off of this real quick and show you. There's a video I'd like you to watch. I'm not going to play it on Zoom because I don't know how that would work, but it's in Weichert University, and it's called Show Stopping Open House. It's only 4 minutes long. So go in there, watch this little 4-minute video. It's if we were doing this training in person, I usually like to show this video in person because it's only 4 minutes long. But it's a really good example. Like even in the little picture here, you can see the balloons. And is there one sign in that yard? No, there's about 20, right? And so it has several different examples, good examples of how to create a show-stopping experience for people at an open house. And that's what you want. You don't want people just saying, hey, it's just another open house. Yeah, I went to an open house today. You want to say, oh man, you wouldn't believe this open house I went to. They had balloons everywhere, and it was a great time. We had a good time over there. So make sure you're doing something a little bit different, okay? So showcasing the home, get your balloons up early. Make sure you're strategically looking at those roads. You always want to arrive early if you can. If you're starting at 2 o'clock, you should be at the house, balloons and signs up by like 1:30, and you should be at the house at 1:30 and getting everything ready. One of the big reasons for that is you might have people waiting in the driveway. So if you're trying to show up right at 2 o'clock, maybe not all the lights are on and everything, you got people in the driveway, it just doesn't look very professional. If you show up 30 minutes early and someone's waiting in the driveway, well, that's on them. They can sit and wait and say, oh, just give me 10 minutes, let me get the lights on and everything, and we'll be all set. Which will happen when you advertise like on social media and stuff. Sometimes people will show up that way. Again, get the mortgage payment sheet out there. That's helpful. Marketing materials, all your agency stuff. Get all the lights on, open the curtains, as much natural light as you can get into the property. Dress appropriately, wear your name tag. Your name tag is really important because sometimes I've forgotten my name tag, and it's like you're standing at the door and people are like, oh, are you the agent or are you another buyer? Like by immediately having your name tag, nobody will ever ask you that, right? They're like, okay, you're the agent. So have the name tag, makes it look a little more professional. Have some music on. I do find that silence is not great at open houses, so having some kind of music or background is helpful. It's why, like at restaurants, they're always playing music because the pure silence is kind of weird. So some kind of music or something. I'm not a big fan of the TVs being on, although I will say, like in the fall when you put the big football game on, college or professional, like that seems to be kind of fun for people. I've had people hang out and like, oh, let me watch the end of this game. Like, it's kind of fun, but that's about the only thing I found on TV that works. Sometimes I've seen agents put HGTV on, like that's kind of cute. I think that's fine if you wanted to do that. But generally just music. I think if the home has fireplaces, as it gets a little cooler, I think getting those fireplaces on is a nice way to do that. Although I definitely would ask the sellers first. Sometimes they have issues with that. Greet everyone at the open house. Thank them for coming. Smile as they come in. One of the little stories that I like to tell when I was doing a lot of open houses, it is hard. The hardest thing I think with an open house is to be energetic when someone comes to the door. When you've been sitting there for 45 minutes, twiddling your thumbs, waiting for someone to come, it's really hard to keep your energy up. So one of the little stupid things nowadays with your cell phone, you can do anything you want, right? You could watch whatever you want, do whatever you want. But back then we didn't have all that. So I literally had a little joke book. It wasn't a little one, it was a big joke book. And so I know it seems stupid, but like I would just kind of hang out and I would be working on paperwork or whatever I'm doing. When I see someone starting to pull up, I would pull out the joke book and read a couple of jokes. Not that they would make me be laughing hysterically, but just, it kind of just brings my mood up. And it was kind of what I did to remind myself, smile, pull yourself out of whatever funk you're in and say hello. And I don't naturally put off that like super friendly vibe anyway. Like I have to really kind of turn it on for people to feel that. So make sure though that you're doing that. And it is harder than it sounds because it's not like, okay, I gotta go smile. It's more, okay, I'm ready for my open house. No one's here for an hour and I'm sitting here, and then you start getting down, just naturally your body starts shutting down. Then all of a sudden someone pulls up and you're like, hey, come on in. It's just it's not good energy. So do whatever you got to do to make that happen. Have all your guests sign in. One of the best ways that I found to get people to sign in is get permission from the seller. So you simply ask your seller, every time someone comes to your house, I'm going to have them sign in. If they don't sign in, are you okay with me saying they can't come inside? I've never had a seller say no to that. They all say, yes, that sounds great. So that way, when you're at the door and they want to come in and you say, well, I need you to sign in here on the guest register, put your name, phone number, email address. And they say, oh, well, I'm not going to sign in. I'm not signing in. You say, well, I do understand. I really do. However, this is my client's house, and they have instructed me to have every single person that comes in sign into my guest register. Well, I don't want you calling me. Well, I can make a note to not call you, but I do have to have your true information here. You can't put Donald at donaldduck.com. I've got to have your real information for the seller. Well, if that's the way it's going to be, then I'm not coming in. Have a nice day. I mean, that has to be the conversation. People will push back on that, but they don't need to come in. And those aren't the real buyers anyway. They're just not. So we can be very polite and understanding of why they don't want to give us their info. But by putting it on our seller and say, I have promised my seller I will have everybody's information that comes into their home, if we were advertising your home, I'm sure you'd want a list of everyone that came to your house. So that's what this seller has asked me to do. So that's why I'm asking you. So if they say, all right, I'll put my info, but I don't want you to call me, no problem. All right. So we will have to abide by that and just make a little note, make a little star or something that just says not to call them. Okay. So that's how I like to have it. Now there are some real estate agents, I think in that video that I just talked to you about, I think that lady has people sign out because she feels like it's a lot easier to get people's true information on the way out after we built some rapport. I can't argue with that. You know, I'm not going to say don't do it that way. To each their own. I have just found it's hard to get people to sign out when they're not interested in that house. When they are interested, it's no problem. But when they're not interested in that house, you can't stand in their way. Like I can physically stand in your way and stop you from coming into the house. I can't stand in the way and stop you from getting out because that's called kidnapping, right? So I can stop you from coming in, but I can't stop you from going out. If I stand in that doorway and ask people not to come in, I won't get into a physical confrontation with anybody. But if I stand in that doorway and say, you can't leave, I guarantee you will have physical confrontations. So we're not trying to do that. So that's why I like to have them sign in. To me, it's just an easier conversation, and I get to feel who they are right from the get-go. But we do have agents in our office and other agents that like to have people signing out after they build some rapport. That's fine. Just make sure you didn't tell your seller that you'd have everybody sign in because you might not get everybody that way. Okay. Another way to deal with COVID and safety concerns and things like that is you can have the front door shut and locked and put a nice sign on the door, not a scratch piece of paper with a pen, but like a nice printed sign on the door that says, hi, my name's Aaron Kraft with Weichert Realtors Unlimited. Due to safety concerns and COVID, we're asking just one couple at a time through the open house. Please ring the doorbell. If I can meet you, or when I can meet you, I'll meet you at the door as soon as possible. If it's not right away, I'm just simply showing someone else, and as soon as they are ready to leave, I'll invite you in, something like that, right? So we use that idea for safety for a long time, but now we're also using that for the health concerns of not having too many people in. All right, so got ahead of myself there a little bit, but there's different kinds of open house sign-ins. Now with My Weichert, there's the open house sign-in on My Weichert. And so you can have your laptop there, iPad there, you can have people just electronically sign in. It is statistically true that if you have people electronically sign in, they're much more likely to put the true information than if they have to handwrite it. So I think that's a really good way to do it. Plus, when they sign in that way, it's already in your system. So it saves you a step from having to enter it all. So that might be a really good way to have your laptop, iPad out for people to sign in on that. All right. All right. We talked about this a little bit, handling those objections. I don't want to sign in. I'm working with another real estate agent. So when they say I don't want to sign in, again, I like to just say, well, I do understand. I totally sympathize with that. However, I told my seller I would get everybody's information that came to the house. And I would pause and say, oh, well, I don't want to sign in. Well, then I do understand, but I hope you understand that I can't let you in because I told the seller that. And usually they'll sign in anyway. The second one, well, I'm already working with another real estate agent. They say, well, I definitely understand that. However, I'd still like you to put your information down with your phone number, plus the information of your real estate agent and their phone number if you have it. If you don't, I can look it up, but I do need their name. That's a good one because a lot of times people just say, well, if I just tell the agent I'm working with another agent, I won't have to give my info. And I'm not going to let them get away with that. I still need your information because you're the one that's physically here. This is for my seller. And then if you have a real estate agent, I like to see their name and I can look up their info if you don't have it with you. Because it kind of calls their bluff sometimes. So a lot of times they're not working with an agent. But if they are, that's great. They put down another agent name, that's wonderful, no problem. Then of course I won't call them. I will call the agent back for some feedback, that sort of thing. So it's a good way to call their bluff. All right, closing at the open house. Every single time you have someone at the open house, you have to ask them if they're interested in making an offer. And I know it seems silly, but you'd be surprised how the answers that you're going to get on this. All right. So it does, like this, the second bullet point here, when they say, no, we're not interested in making an offer, it actually opens the door for saying, oh yeah, I totally understand. You know, you got to find the right house. So I'm free after this open house to maybe meet with you guys at 5 o'clock and, you know, go through what we call a buyer consultation and go through all of that with them, right? It gives you that opportunity naturally to try to set that appointment. Say, I'm free today at 5 or tomorrow at 2. You know, and just assume we're going to get the buyer consultation. Of course, most of the time, they're not going to want to go right into it, but we have to assume that they are. And if you set the time, say I could do it today at 5 or tomorrow at 2, you'd be surprised how many times say, okay, we'll just do it tomorrow at 2. That sounds fine. Like, so it's a great way to get appointments. But also when you ask them, hey, do you want to buy this house? You'd be surprised. Sometimes you've been watching this couple and they don't seem interested at all, and you ask them and they're like, well, I think we might. We'll have to take a look a little further, but I think we might. Really? Oh, okay. You know, and so it gives you a chance to kind of have that conversation. It's also a good icebreaker, I found, because it's such a direct question. When you've been working with buyers or walking them around the open house, and you can clearly tell they're not going to buy the house from what they're saying. You say, look, you know, I have this thing where I have to ask every single person that comes to the open house, do you want to buy it? And based on our conversations, it seems like probably you don't, but I have to ask, do you want to buy the house? And sometimes you're like, no, clearly we don't. And so it just, sometimes it's a good icebreaker as well. All right, but ask those questions. As you're closing up, make sure you turn off all lights or whatever the sellers told you to do. They said leave them on, fine. Clean up after yourself. So one of the best ways to tick off your client is to leave the house a mess, right? So spend time cleaning up after yourself. Make sure everything is the way you found it. It's, you know, write your thank you notes to your prospective buyers. I always used to have a thank you note though that I would write during the open house and leave it for my seller. Leave it on the counter. You know, thanks for having me today. Or like if you're borrowing, somebody's listing, say, you know, thank you for having me today at Weichert. We're partnering up together. I know Madison's got you covered, but we work together to help you get sold. Like those kind of niceties go a long way towards helping each other, helping, you know, build the reputation, etc. And please, please, please make sure the home is secure when you're leaving. All right, take down all your signs, you know, thank the neighbors, make sure you're doing your follow-up calls. Anybody who comes to your open house, you need to follow up with them within 24 hours. The best thing to do would be to follow up with them that day. So if you end at 4, you make your follow-up calls at 5:30, 6 o'clock. The people that said no, they're not interested in a buyer consultation, you'd be surprised how many of them, when you come back and with the follow-up call, will say, well, yeah, we've been talking about it, and actually we would like to meet with you. And they just won't call you back. You have to be the one to call them. So follow up some more, okay? All right, why follow up? Well, again, we know 74% of the open house attendees purchase a home in the last 6 months. It gives us that competitive advantage. Most real estate agents will not call them back. It's consistent with our full service image. And then also it protects you from appearing discriminatory. If you say, well, I'm going to follow up with that person, but not this person, someone could read that the wrong way. All right, so follow up with everybody. And even the people who said, no, we're not interested in consultation, we're not interested in that house, unless they explicitly said, you better not call me, those people you can leave off the list out of respect. But unless they said that, follow up with them anyway. Say, I know that didn't work for you, and I just wanted to say thank you for coming to the open house. If there's anything I can do for you in the future, you know, I appreciate it. Like, that's all it has to be. It doesn't have to be an oversell on that. All right. All right. So now we use My Weichert for everything. So after the open house, make sure you're using My Weichert instead of Weichert Pro here, but you use My Weichert for your consistent follow-up. We have open house follow-up programs, campaigns in there, but you can create your own as well. And so once they automatically sign up for the open house, it'll put them through the different steps, right? And you can put them into things like the monthly market update, and you're doing an open house next week. Maybe you email out all the people who have come to your recent open houses. Let them know, hey, I'm also doing an open house this week over here if anybody's interested, something like that. Okay. So I don't want to go over those slides because we're doing My Weichert now instead of Weichert Pro. But any questions, Kim, that you have on open house program?
I don't think so. I may have questions next week after I do two this weekend, but it's pretty clear. I've gone through the initial program from My Weichert. I've watched the Weichert Open House, the 4 videos that you had mentioned. So I think I've got this. I may have questions later, but
sure, yeah. I'm sure you will. We all have some questions and stuff, but it's a great way to just work on your skills and work on talking to people, work on using that paid method. So when they ask something about the house, they say, oh, I don't really like the kitchen cabinets, and you can pause, acknowledge, and then isolate. Other than the kitchen cabinets, would you buy the house? No, I don't think we would. Okay, so you can work on some of those skill sets as well as prospecting.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you guys are pretty thorough with, how to get things done, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, good.
I am afraid of balloons, however, so blowing up balloons is going to be an issue.
Yeah.
But I'll get that. I'll get over it.
You have the, just wrapping them around the thing?
No, I'm just afraid of them popping on me.
Oh, yeah. From time to time, they will. Yeah.
I'll get over it.
All right.
Put on your big girl pants. They're just balloons.
You can underinflate them a little bit if you want.
Yeah.
Better likelihood they won't pop, but.
Yeah, so I'll be at the office tomorrow. I can pick up the signs tomorrow when I'm there, and then I'll